Welcome to the Ladies Kickin Ass Podcast, where we raise our voices and honor the badass achievements of women in the service industry. Get ready for empowering conversations, inspiring stories, and a whole lot of ass-kicking energy. Join us as we redefine what it means to be bold, fearless, and unapologetically YOU, babe. This is your platform, your community, and your source of inspiration. So buckle up, get ready to rock and roll, and let's show this world just how much we can accomplish. Welcome to the Ladies Kickin Ass Podcast. Hey ladies, welcome back to Ladies Kickin Ass, and I am so excited today to be able to introduce to you Julia Napini, and she is coming here to us to talk to us about lots of very interesting things that we need to consider when we are, 1, starting a business, 2, growing a business, 3, just living in a business, and actually just being a good person in the world, but operating it with integrity. And I love so much about what she stands for, what she's doing within her business. And I just think we're going to have a really great conversation around the topic of integrity today and what that means to live with it yourself. And then also to instill that into a growing business that you're trying to start, and then the culture and just like integrity is everything. It's one of our values here at my service business. It's something that's so important to me. It's like a character judgment of people too, is do they operate in integrity? So super excited to have this conversation today. Julia, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Why don't you give us a little bit of your backstory, who you are as a lady that's kicking ass, and why you chose to do what you do, and expand more about your business.
Thank you so much for having me. I love the name of the show, and I am just feeling so empowered and open to share. So thank you for the intro. So professionally, I am a clinical and forensic social worker. So I own a counseling practice, and we have a team of 20 clinicians and 3 on our admin team. And I am also a private practice consultant. So I help clinicians start, expand, and diversify their own practices. And then I host a podcast called The Compassionate Climb, where we discuss maintaining integrity throughout your business practices. And although it can be challenging, it is doable. And on a personal level, I am a mom to... My daughter just turned 11. I'm still struggling to adjust to that. She just entered middle school. I have 2 bonus boys in my life, thanks to my fiance, and we're both business owners. And so we have some really interesting conversations about what that entails, but coming from 2 very different industries. So it's a little bit about me.
Awesome. What industry is he in?
He is a plumber. So they
Awesome.
kind of do all of the things. They have an electrical side and HVAC, and then he's a visionary. So he always has new ideas and is incorporating additional things into the business all the time.
Awesome. Well, I could talk for days with him about that with my septic company here. I'm sitting here thinking, I didn't plan very well for this podcast. So we do epic shit over here at our septic company. If you're watching this on video, you can see my shirt. Otherwise, you're listening to it what the hell is she talking about? That we love to have fun with that stuff. So it is a service that is definitely needed. I am a huge cheerleader for the trades, and it's just it's an incredible business venture to go to. And that is a lot of who the people are that listen to this podcast are service-based entrepreneurs. Now, you're service-based in a completely different field, and he's service-based in a completely different field. You have completely different kinds of people coming to work for these industries, but it all kind of ties back together. How do you build a culture of integrity in a business if you're building a business? If someone asked you that question, what would your answer be?
So a lot of it comes from what your motivation is in starting the business at the outset. So is your mission primarily income-based? Is your mission primarily to help more people? Is it because you want to build a team and you really like being in a leadership or managerial role? There's so many different avenues. Is there a need and you've kind of identified that you can meet that need having a bigger team? So for me, it was getting really clear on that, and it was informed by all of my earlier experiences. So the places that I had worked prior to starting my own practice, the things that were lacking, and then obviously the things that went well. And I started off solo practice very lonely, and I missed the team environment and that dynamic and the consultation. And so my motivation was I was getting more referrals than I knew what to do with. I can only see so many people in a day. And so it was the needs of the community, but it was also because I wanted that team. And I really saw a lot of those leadership qualities in myself. And I felt like I could really shine there. And so we just took it off and ran with it. But I think it's really about what you're looking for when you're starting at the beginning, being clear about that, having that in your messaging and your branding, and when you're hiring and in your interview process, and then weaving it throughout the work you're doing.
Yes. Oh, so huge about being clear about that. Like, let's just start at the beginning of that about hiring people to come onto your team too. Like how you show up online, what your reviews say about you, your branding, the way that you market your services, the way you talk to people on the phone. Really looking for the right people to be on the team that will embrace and love the fact that you're a company of integrity. Sometimes it can be difficult. If you're trying to hire people in today's world, I don't know what the hell is happening out there. It's a bloody nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, we have able bodies that will do this, but I'm so damn picky about who I bring on to my team because of that right there. Like, I need you to be a person of integrity. I need you to be somebody that's going to be honest. I need you to complete jobs that you're going out to do, fully knowing that we're giving them the service that we promise them when we sell them on the service in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you do when you are helping businesses, if you're consulting with them, or even building your own team in finding those kinds of people? Like, what are your suggestions of people? Because I know people are struggling with hiring so bad right now.
It's true. And I think in my industry specifically with the pandemic, it has become so easy for people to go out on their own. And it's very low cost to start a counseling practice, especially virtually, if you don't have rent, very low overhead. And so I knew that I really needed to set myself apart and be clear about what I could offer and what somebody was going to be getting coming to work for me, as opposed to going off on their own or working for someone else. And so it all starts in the job post and the way that we set ourselves apart. So what makes us different? That we care about the whole person. It's not just them as a worker, and that we really believe in the following. So paying people well, but also providing the support that they need and focusing on their professional development and how can we get them where they want to go. One of the things that really sets me apart is a lot of clinicians that are in private practice and are expanding to group are intimidated or resistant if someone wants to start their own practice eventually. And we open that dialogue right in the beginning. So when I'm meeting them and they are potentially coming on board, it's part of our screening process. And that in and of itself is not going to prevent me from bringing someone on. We work with it. And so if they want to start their own practice, then we are going to have conversations about that throughout. I'm going to make sure that they are prepared in a very different way. They're going to have exposure to things that maybe another clinician would have no interest in. And so I think that's another thing that sets us apart. But our mission, vision, and values are very clear. They're available on our website. They're in our employee manual right in the very beginning. And so they're things that we talk about early on and then bring up and remind people of in our team meetings. And we really weave it throughout all of our practice.
That's smart. That's smart because people need to be, when I do my first interviews with people too, like I don't really even talk a whole lot about the job specifically. Like I want to get to know like their personality. I want to talk about what our business stands for. I want to talk to them about what's important to them. Like I think a lot of times when people are interviewing people to come in too, it's like just strictly like, tell me what you have like big skills with. What's your weakness? What's this? Like they're like run of the mill questions all of the time, where it's like if you'll just sit and have a person to person conversation in that first interview, you'll know right away if this is a person, one of that seems to embrace integrity and that it is an important value for them to have also. I think one of the best questions is to ask is, what do you expect from your employers?
Mm-hmm. It's a great one.
Because so many times, like, they'll tell you exactly what they need from you in order to be successful at their job. If they're like, I don't need anything. You're like, yeah, because you're not going to be accountable for anything, like there's so much. If it's like communication, like I like the honesty. I like, being able to listen to them about what they're looking for and just
Mhm.
getting to know them as a person versus just hiring for the skills. Because if somebody's got the right personality, you can literally train them to do anything. I truly believe that because they got to
Yeah.
have a willingness to be able to do it. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think another aspect too is that it really is going to be over time because anybody can present well in an initial interview. And I think the questions that you ask are so crucial. So you're really pulling more out of them than just what is on their resume. Another question I love to ask is, why us? What intrigued you and led you to click and apply? What did you see when you browsed our website that got you to the point where you wanted to know more, right? Do they see what sets
Yeah.
us apart and really distinguishes us from other people? But then I also think the piece about having those regular checkpoints, we're fortunate or unfortunate, depending on how you look at it. We're an insurance-based practice. So when we hire someone, there's typically a 3-month credentialing process. And so they're still working elsewhere. They have plenty of time to give notice wherever they're working, but there's a period of time there where we're still in communication and I'm keeping them updated and we're starting some of the onboarding, but they don't technically start and see their first client until they're officially credentialed. So with that being said, it's kind of nice, although it's kind of a hurry up and wait and is a very interesting model. We have a lot more of the opportunity. How responsive are they to my emails? Are they giving me all of the paperwork that I need? Are they also checking in with me as much as I'm checking in with them to provide updates? Have they done all the training videos that I asked them to? What kinds of questions are they asking? So I do tend to come into them officially starting with more information than usual, but then it's those touch points once they're onboarded, because even though I feel like I have really good judgment and I go with my gut and I have strong intuition, it really is going to be dependent upon certain situations and circumstances, how they handle themselves, and we can all be surprised.
Yes. And a big piece of advice to anybody that feels like maybe they have a member of their team that isn't and doesn't value integrity or maybe isn't doing integral practices at your place of business. See you later. Like don't keep that around because
Right.
the thing is that especially if you got a smaller team, man, that's like a bad apple in a bag, like it's just going to rub off on everybody else. So and so gets away with it. So it really starts just taking people that are of high levels of integrity. It really makes them start questioning things because the leadership of putting up with that shit is a big deal. It's a huge deal in my industry, big time. Because if somebody, you give somebody an inch, everybody's like, woohoo, we can just run out and do whatever we want to now. You definitely don't want to put that off either. So leadership is huge in making sure that you're setting the example as to what it looks like to have integrity inside of your business. So let's shift gears a little bit too of like, what if somebody's looking at their business and they're like, shit, I need to fix this because I don't think that my business is running from a place of integrity. What would you say to coach them and what steps should they take or really look at in order to start going more that direction?
So I think at any time you can spend the time to really hone in on what you value as a business and what your mission is, the purpose, like what's driving all of your actions. And so as much as I would recommend that happen in the beginning, it's fluid and it's something that can change over time. And you can take the time to really fine tune that at any point and be more clear about that with everyone else on the team. I think the other piece that has developed over time is the manual and policies, where in the beginning, did I have the manual that I have now? No, it's grown and it's expanded and we add to it all the time. But I think that is also really key. I recognize the importance of it, but the team also gets say. So if a situation happens, we deal with it and then we come together. And are we in agreement that this now needs to be a policy? And what could we have done different? How can we learn from it? I have them review it. Do they have any requested edits or ways to word it? So I think the key is not just saying it, it's also embodying it and living it. Like you said, being that leader and setting that example. It's holding people accountable, but it's also having it in writing so that depending on different learning styles or communication styles, people know where to go to find it. And it's not just a one and done, it's reinforced.
Yes. And that you continue to revisit those things. I think it's something too, like mission statements, vision, like this is what we stand for. Someone creates it once upon a time in a workshop they go to, and then someone slaps that sucker on the wall. And then 20 years later, they're blowing dust off of the same value statement. If you are still operating from the same place that you were, I say, even like we're coming up on a new year, like this is something that we sit down and we go through every single year at our business. We pick out like a word of the year. What are the things we're focusing on? For example, this year it was stronger. Like we grew like crazy, but we were lacking in processes, just as you were talking about. So how can we make our processes stronger? How can we get stronger, better, more even qualified people on the team? Like, what are you focusing on? Because every year, at minimum, you should reevaluate things and look at like, where's the business at now? And then what do we need to be working on moving forward? If COVID taught us anything, it's like shit can happen in a second that completely can blow up your business, good or bad. So many people, if you were in the restaurant industry, you didn't learn how to pivot and do takeout food, you went under. If you were in a home service company, you blew up the great way. And it was like, we'll take every person we can have because we're so stinking busy because everyone's at home. And now you look at your team now that it's kind of come back down, housing market, everything has come back down. And you're looking at it and you're like, we're overstaffed and now we've got to do something different too. So it's really evaluating what you have going on all the time. Is that something that you do in your business, or what are some tips, tricks, something that you have around stuff like that too, for people to kind of make sure that they're always staying nimble on what their vision and mission is with their company?
Yeah, so a piece of that is definitely opportunities for those touch points and feedback. It sounds like you do the same. And so it's like you're describing kind of a state of the business where everyone's a part of it. You're bringing them up to speed. It sounds like there's more transparency than most businesses of what's going on behind the scenes and where we're headed. And it's making sure that people are aligned with that and that they all know their piece and what they can be doing to contribute to that end goal. And the fluidity and bringing it to life, that it's not just something on paper or something that we say on occasion. It's how do you embody that? How do you live that? And also recognizing when we're out of alignment. So if there is something that happens, whether it's a person on the team who is not necessarily in alignment or a situation that happens and we could do better, that we use it as a learning opportunity. And it's not criticism, but it's more, let's open the dialogue.
Yes. I think that's huge. And I think that I love what you say about the transparency of things too. I think if you're really going to run a business with integrity, like the people on your team knowing what the state of your business is, where you're going, what the goals are, and bringing them in to help build some of those integrity processes is so huge if you want a real buy-in from people. Because when they feel like their voice is valued and the things that mean a lot to them, and you can bring this together in a big project for everyone, it's so huge because people start taking ownership in it.
They do, but I also have a question for you because this is something I'm experiencing in my own business right now. So I almost feel like I've taken everything that we're talking about to such an extreme. So not only are we coming together as a team once a month, but we also have consultation groups and we have surveys that are administered. So we get feedback about engagement and we get feedback from clients. And I meet with everyone at a minimum once a month, one-on-one. And it's not just specific to their caseload, but it's really them as a person. And are they getting what they need and enough support? And what are their long-term goals? So there's so much of that I have almost found that the people pleaser in me has taken over. And there are some times where there might be a process. And because I am so open to everyone's feedback and I want them to be understood and heard and respected, that you have so many people's perspectives that you're juggling. So for example, we've recently
Mm-hmm.
had an issue in our practice with compliance and clients that are canceling and no showing and not giving enough notice. And so we had put a policy in place a year ago. It's in writing. I met with the entire team. We went through it. I provided coaching on how to relay that to clients in the beginning of treatment and then at subsequent intervals when it makes sense. We've trained our administrative assistant, and we've also taken the responsibility off of the clinician where they don't have to worry about the financial aspect. The administrative assistant will tackle that. They can focus on the clinical work, and it's still an issue. And so I've had conversations with the clinician about what that's like for them. I'm constantly mindful of the client and what that's like for them to be charged, because every situation is unique and they have their own circumstances. I'm thinking of it from the administrative assistant's perspective, because that's not a fun job for her to be having these conversations with people that are not thrilled that they're getting charged. And then I'm also thinking about me as a business owner and trying to keep everything running and making sure that we have enough capital to run and move forward and do all of these things to reinvest in the business and make sure everyone's incentivized for good work. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but for me, it's hard to juggle all of that. And I feel like I've opened the door, which I don't regret at all, to so much feedback that it can be really hard in those times when everyone feels differently.
I can relate to you in so much. And first of all, kudos to you for spending all that time meeting with all of those people, because that is a hella time commitment. So that is so huge on you. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure that your staff appreciates that so much, because as somebody that is very much, I say, a recovering people pleaser, sometimes it bites me more than others.
Yeah.
I think the feedback is still super important. I love the idea of like surveys and kind of trying to streamline some of those things. Even if it is, I had some coaching. It was a business coach, and it was advice from this business coach that they said, how many times are you asking them what's going on in their job? Like you having these meetings with them, because I try to do that as much as I can too. And I said, well, I'm trying to do this at least once a month. And I was like meeting with people once a week and like same thing, like I want everyone to be happy. And he said, here's some advice for you that will save you so much time. We have little channels set up in our Slack, and have them report out to you on that basis that you want to sit down with them. Because now it's their responsibility to report out to you, even if you want to formalize it and like put it in like a Google form or something like that that you can send out to them. It's
Yeah.
saving you time as the leader to not have the face to face so much, like even if you do that once a quarter, but you're still getting feedback from them once a month. And
Mm-hmm.
then as a consensus, you're not sitting down one on one with them. And like, I don't know about you, but if you're like a people pleaser, you want to say yes to them in the moment of like trying to make everybody happy. And then at the end of having like 5 sit downs, you're like, shit, I just said yes to 5 different things. And now I've got to make good on all these. Where if they're reporting out to you, it's one centralized area that you can evaluate, like, what are the overall things? Like if people say like, you know what, like I'd really love to have more team meeting out, like team outings or something, like for an example, right? And maybe only 3 people said this and 3 people didn't. But if this is important to 3 people, it might be probably important to other people. So you can sit down and look at it as a whole instead of trying to have that like make you happy before you leave this meeting, make you happy before you leave this meeting. And then when you sit down and evaluate all the things you just promised to people as the leader, you're like, I can't do all of this. So it's almost like you're over promising people things and like, shit, how am I supposed to do this now? And it becomes overwhelming for us as the leaders to be able to do that. So I have really started implementing that, and it really is amazing how many people, like what they would say to me in a sit down with them, and we'd maybe get off on a one off or a personal conversation or something, because I have that closeness with the people on my team. It's so much quicker for me to do that. And I can see as a whole, like, hey, maybe there's communication errors here. And I focus on just one of the biggest problems that people are talking about instead of everybody's individual problems. So I know as a leader, especially if you have a smaller team, like a team under 10 or maybe even under 20, and you meet with them so much, that you really have to start thinking at some level, like what is best for the team as a whole
Mm-hmm.
versus everyone on an individual level. Because if they're really serious about something that's bothering them that you're not addressing as a whole like that, they'll keep telling you. And then you can really see, like, were you just upset one day about something in particular, or is this something that's reoccurring that we really do need to focus on? But taking the biggest problem as everybody sees it, like the biggest obstacle or challenge, and then attacking just one at a time versus trying to make 10 people happy. Does
Yeah.
that
Well,
help at all?
accountability, you have to accept the fact that making people happy is not the priority and it's unlikely. And so I think that that was something I had to step into really early on and lean into it and get comfortable with it, even though it felt really uncomfortable. So that's
Yeah.
really tricky. But yeah, I think what you're speaking to is once you get to a new level in terms of like numbers and the size of the team, the structure is going to change. And so we're right on that cusp of making that shift. And I definitely acknowledge the need for more of a leadership team. I'm trying to juggle. I still want to kind of have the pulse. I still want to be accessible and available for certain situations. And I don't want anyone to feel like I'm pulling back too much. But with a team that size, it's normal. So we need more of those intermediary people. And I'll be honest, it has been challenging to find that because that is not something
Yes.
that everyone is interested in. And I would love the idea of promotion within the team versus somebody coming in from the outside. And so we've done what we can. We have several clinicians that provide some supervision where they're the point person for someone when they come on board because they're more seasoned. They've been with the practice longer. And so, yeah, we're definitely working on that. But yeah, it comes to a point where we're literally like right there kind of going into new territory. And that's going to be an adjustment for me for sure.
It is huge. And something I've learned too with that, and this may sound really bold or kind of like, well, that's kind of bitchy, but it's being honest too, is that sometimes when you look inside of your team and you're like, okay, I have grown to this point where I can't have 10 people reporting to me. Like, that's just not, I'm not being able to help them at the best level that I can. So I need the intermediary person. So, which one of the people that have been here do I think would be the best fit? Sometimes it's not somebody that's inside of the business. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it is bringing in that fresh set of eyes that comes in that says, this is how I can help. And there's not the emotional attachment of the business in there yet that really helps catapult that business to a whole nother level and really has provided better support for the people that were actually needing it than when I had promoted within, because I did that too. And I've had it work successfully and I've had it not work successfully. Like my field technicians, if you promote them inside, it's almost like, no, I'm your boss and blah, 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 blah. Like then there's like the ego that gets involved with stuff. But bringing somebody from the outside in that was like, hey, I'm here and I just want to help you out. The intimidation or like the competition wasn't there like it was promoting within. So I'm a big fan of being able to do that too if you have people that are actually ready to do that. But I think a lot of times in business, we think, oh, they've been here the longest, so they should get the promotion. But sometimes they don't have the skills to be able to do that. So I think as you're talking about growing a team with integrity, that's something to really look at too, is when we are promoting to those next level managers, leadership, supervisor roles, that those people can really take that on. And it's not just a progressive step, you know? Sometimes I think we get stuck in like the ladder mentality of like corporate stuff. And oftentimes in small business, that can backfire sometimes. That's been my experience with that. So I know that it works successfully sometimes with people, but that's just something for people to think about. When you're evaluating somebody for that supervisor skill, make sure one, that that's something that they fully understand what that means and who they have to become. Because sometimes if they have relationships with the people that they work with, it's really hard for them to then become that person's supervisor too. Have you ever had an experience like that?
So at this point, we've identified the 3 people that have expressed interest in supervision, and I've seen kind of a supervisory, like those traits that are evident when we have our consultation groups or in team meetings or when I meet with them one-on-one. And so they've successfully transitioned into those roles, and I think it makes sense. I have also identified my person from the outside. And so it's really just a timing piece. So she has a timeline that she's working off of before she can really make that full transition. So we've made it gradual at this point. She'll be in a clinical director role. She's coming in from the outside. The team has met her at different points. And so she's going to be coming to our next team meeting, and they're all going to get to those that haven't met her, meet her, but also kind of do like a question and answer. And I'm getting clearer on what her responsibilities are going to be and what her role is. And so I agree. I think that for me, I've had to do it gradually to be cost effective. So with us being insurance, we have a glass ceiling. And so I know, as opposed to some other industries, we only get what the insurance companies are willing to provide us. So we have to work within that. And so I have had to probably delegate and expand the organization and promote slower than I would have liked to, because the funding hasn't always been there. And so I feel like we've been able to do it and manage it as best we can, kind of under the circumstances that we're in. And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to her gradually starting kind of more in a behind the scenes role, managing a lot of, we have dashboards. So we track documentation and session numbers and involvement in the culture and utilization of our admin team. And so she's going to help me with a lot of that tracking, making sure that notes are done on time, that they're locked, that they're of the appropriate quality. And so she'll start off there. She's provided some trainings to the team as well, so they've gotten to know her in that sense. And then we'll gradually shift to more of that day-to-day point person as they get to know her and trust her better. So I think you're absolutely right. And there's some positions that make a lot more sense for it to be internal, but you really have to vet your staff and make sure that they are aware of what it entails and that they really have those skills. And then there are other positions that make a lot more sense for it to be somebody coming in from the outside. If they're going to be in any position of like discipline, hiring and firing, like that should not be somebody that has a relationship of a colleague. It puts them in a very uncomfortable position.
Yep. It's those little things that I felt so terrible too, because I felt like I set this person up to the end of it. That's so sad to say that, but like I wanted to promote him so much, and then once it happened, it was kind of like, yeah, I missed taking the proper steps that I should have done, and that's a painful conversation to have and come back and be like, maybe this wasn't a good idea. So always good to think about that.
Give it a chance.
We learn from our mistakes, and that's what I love about this podcast is I can tell you all of mine in hopes that it will help you not make them on your end. And that's what we love about that stuff. So tell us more, Julia, about what Compassionate Consulting Company is all about. So if someone is looking to start their own business or maybe expand their business, when would they come to you? What kind of services do you provide to them?
So you can reach out at any stage. I was always told like a niche is the way to go. And I have yet to find which stage of practice I enjoy working with the most, because they are all so different and I enjoy them for different reasons. So if somebody is considering starting a practice, but really intimidated and overwhelmed, they don't know where to begin and they want to make sure that they're doing it right, we help with that. If they already have their business established, they're considering hiring clinicians, they want to expand, they have more referrals than they know what to do with, they can't necessarily see anybody else, but they want to still serve and provide quality mental health treatment. So I help with the hiring process and getting clear on the mission, vision, and values and the manual and the policies and making sure that all of their systems can be multiplied. And then we also help with diversification. So I, as I mentioned, am a forensic social worker. So I mediate divorces and I'm a parenting coordinator. So I can help people incorporate that into their business, add consulting, add coaching, if they're interested in podcasting, if they want to do some public speaking or training. So if they do the one-to-one counseling, but they want to broaden their horizons and utilize those skills in different ways, I also help them with that.
Very cool. There's so many things in businesses too in today's world that you can like the diversification opportunities is mind blowing. It seriously is. Like there's so many people on podcasts. I don't know about you. I'd love to get your feedback on this too, but I love to listen. Like I'm in the home service industry. I love to listen to other people that own home service companies that have started their own podcast that like literally they just sit and have conversations with other home service companies and like listening, like fly on the wall situation of like listening to them, like how they built this and what they did with this, or the financials, or like getting contracts or doing all this stuff. And you're like, oh my God, like it is literally like sitting in a classroom every single day with earbuds for an hour listening to this. And every industry, I dare to say, in today's world, probably has a podcast around it where you can plug in and learn from people that are totally out there kicking ass doing things, and then just incorporate that stuff into your business. It's so cool. And that is, I'm sure, probably what you're doing a lot with your podcast, correct?
Yeah, so it all started with a podcast that I stumbled upon when I was considering starting my own practice. And it gave me the confidence and the tools and the resources because I was hearing someone's actual story of doing the same things. And they were a few steps ahead of me, and they were very open and honest, and they were really a pioneer and a trendsetter. And so that was all I needed to just take off and go for it. And so podcasting has been so helpful for me. And then when I started getting interviewed on shows, it was such a great opportunity to pause and reflect on my own journey, because I'm somebody who just an opportunity presents itself. And if I feel passionate about it and I feel like I have the skill set, I tend to go for it. And so I was not always kind of lifting my head up and looking at the big picture and looking back on all that I had accomplished. And so those were great opportunities to do that, but share a lot of what I've learned. So similar to what you were saying, other people can learn from some of the mistakes that we've made, learning curves, challenges. So vulnerability leads to more vulnerability, and we're not alone. And so the more we can talk about that, the more it's normalized and we can relate. So that's where the Compassionate Climb came from. I was struggling to find people that operated from a place of integrity from a business perspective. And so not even necessarily within my team, but when I was trying to build my team beyond my team, so finding an accountant and a financial advisor and an attorney to view our consent forms, I was really having a hard time finding people that came and led with the same value system that I did. And I went through several before I found my core group. And I didn't want it to be that hard for people. And so when I started the show, it was really with the intention to have these conversations with other people about this value system and maintaining integrity. And this piece that we talked about before we started recording of money is important. There's no way that we can deny it. It's all about the value that we place on it. But I always interpreted money with greed. And if your primary motivation was financial, then that equaled that you were a greedy person. And those were just messages that I got growing up. And I see that very differently now. And so we need money to live. And if we're going to run a business, in order for it to be sustainable, it has to be profitable. And that's just the way that it is. So there are ways that you can do that and maintain your integrity and authenticity and be compassionate and empathetic. And there are ways that you can do it that aren't. And so that's really important to me. And I've been fortunate enough to find many people in my industry and beyond that do operate from that place. And so it's been a really enjoyable way to remind myself that I'm not alone in this.
Yes. Oh, so huge. And if you are considering, like, everybody that owns a business has stories that can help other people in those businesses, you know? Like, as niche as my company is in septic business, I could literally start a septic podcast and help septic people learn how to build and brand a business, because it's something that is very difficult in that industry. So you have so much knowledge, and I think that's why I really wanted to bring this up. It's like, stop and reflect on all the things that you have done to build a business. It's insane. And the things that you got to be a little bit crazy to start a business. You have to be really okay with risk. You got to be okay with failure, because it's not if, it's when. That's how we learn. And it's really deciding how you're going to view those things will determine how far it goes. I truly believe that, because people's thresholds are very different, you know, but being able to use those experiences over the years. I've been an entrepreneur for 15 years. Like, we've got some experience at this point that even if you're not in the septic industry or you're not in the medical practice, like, we can help you, because it's business, and most of business is what is happening between your ears in your little cute melon, because a lot of it is just a matter of being like, F this. That didn't work. I'm going to try this. I'm going to keep going. It's resiliency. It's resourcefulness. It's not being afraid to ask for help. And there are so many of us out there. I love more than anything when people shoot me a DM and they're like, hey, I'm thinking about this. And I'm like anybody that has started a business will be very excited to help you, like even have a conversation with you about maybe questions that you have or things like that. So if you are considering starting a business or scaling or going to different levels, or you have questions, don't be afraid to ask people. I think that's one of my biggest pieces of advice for people that want to become entrepreneurs or already are and are struggling. Ask for help.
Yeah.
There's so many people that want to help you. And there's so many people in the industries. Go to networking events, meet people, talk to people. They want to help you. And there's many people that'll go to lunch with you and answer so many questions that even if you leave there feeling like I'm not the only crazy person that I know, they're equally as crazy as I am, it will help you be able to process what it is that you're working through. So this is what I love about this podcast so much. And even this conversation we've been having, Julia, is like so many people will get so much out of this, if not only like building a business of integrity, but realizing, oh, wow, there's another person that I could reach out to or someone that I can connect with that is willing to help me to be able to chase my big dreams of being an entrepreneur too. So you're a great example of what that can be.
And you're also speaking to the commonalities from one industry to another, right? So even though there are nuances, there are still themes that are inherent among all businesses.
Yeah.
So that's important. And what you're speaking to promotes longevity. So if you can reach out to people and you get some information and you have support and you realize you're not alone, it's just going to enable you to do great work for a longer period of time.
Yes, so huge. Well, Julia, if someone wants to connect with you, they want to follow you, they want to learn more about compassionate consulting, where do they find you?
We are on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So compassionateconsultingcompany.com is the website, and all of the links are on there. And we're always posting information on social media about business building and tips and the things that we're up to, but also that we are learning along the way. So would love if anyone would be interested in following and learning with us and from us. And then I would love if people would listen to the show, The Compassionate Climb. I'm really proud of it. We have Ask the Expert segments. We have live consulting calls. And then we also have climb journeys. So people speaking about their career climb and the things that they've learned, challenges that they've overcome. And we weave integrity throughout all of it.
Very cool. Very cool. And we'll be sure to link all of that stuff in the show notes. So it's nice and easy for people to be able to find you if you're driving or whatever. We'd love to be able to do that for you. Well, thank you so much for this conversation. It has been so incredible to chat with you about this. This is something that obviously is so very near and dear to both of our hearts. And I challenge anybody that is listening to this that if you don't have a business that you feel confidently is a business of integrity, that you sit down yourself first and then sit down with your team and figure out how you can make it go that direction. It is huge. Your customers feel that from the second they call on the phone or they reach out to you or they see it in your branding or marketing materials. Show up that way. I think it's one of the biggest ways if you're a service-based business to differentiate yourself from others. It really is. Because sadly, it's a more uncommon practice than it is something that is forefront. So it's an easy way to stand out. I really, truly feel that from the bottom of my heart. But Julia, I love to ask everybody at the end of the podcast, because I am working on a book, which is the everyday badass that is out there making waves and doing really cool things. I want to know how they function and what they think about stuff and how they're contributing to the world. And just because you're not on a movie screen or on the radio doesn't mean that you're not out in the world making difference. And I think we need to highlight more of the everyday woman that is juggling being a mom and being a business owner and taking care of herself and still looking at herself and saying, I am a badass and I am worthy and I deserve all of this goodness that's happening to me. So when you hear the phrase ladies kicking ass, what does that mean to you?
I hear it, and I think someone who is truly authentically themselves, and that they are taking the time and the effort to really hone in on what that means for them to be truly themselves unapologetically and share their gifts and their talents with the world.
Yes. Oh, so good. That authentic connection is something that you can't fake because it's real. And that is how you know that you find your people, and that you find the people that you can build a real circle of people that you can be yourself in, that you can share your struggles with, that you can be honest with them too when they ask you for feedback. I just posted yesterday that your social circle depends so much on the success that you have in your life, and the people that you have around you is so incredibly important. So make sure that you show up authentically as yourself. Someone doesn't agree with who you are and what you stand for, they're not your people. And I know we talked about people pleasing, and it is very difficult for some of us to get over that. But what a liberating thing when you can step into who you fully authentically are, and you're like, there's just as many awesome people out here as I was hoping to find, because I think you just start attracting people when you're living in your authentic energy. So thank you so much for that. That really is important. And thank you so much for listening. Again, be sure to check out the show notes and follow Julia on everything. Her content is incredible, and connect with her if this is something that is interesting to you. Even if you are an entrepreneur, I'm sure she would welcome an awesome DM just saying, hey, I love this episode. And if you have any questions, we're always here to help you. Thank you, Julia.
Thank you.
Thanks for being part of the Ladies Kickin Ass community. Cheers to all you badass women out there. Keep rocking your power, igniting your fire, and making waves in the service industry. If you loved today's episode, please do me a quick favor. Take a screenshot, post it, and tag us at Ladies Kickin Ass. Be sure to include the link to your favorite episode. Your support in spreading the word means the world to us as we aim to empower even more women. Hit that subscribe button to stay tuned for more kick-ass episodes. And don't forget, a 5-star review is the ultimate high five. Connect with us on social media. All the links are in the show notes. Thank you for being part of our tribe. Now go kick some serious ass, lady.